Hello, BookTube. It's Wednesday, and here in America that means it's New Comic Book Day, when resentful neckbeards heave themselves off their favorite basement couch, shuffle to their LCS, their local comic shop, and breathe Dorito breath over all the new comics they'd have no intention of buying. And I like to support my local comic shop, even though it's no longer local for me. It's a great group of people, great shop, and the problem is that I don't buy weekly comic books anymore. I've just completely fallen out of the habit, and not any of the barrage of recent new releases and number ones has served to change that. So instead, I tend to buy graphic novels and collections, reissues of stuff, and thanks to the fact that the comic book audience is much older in 2018 than it was, for instance, 50 years ago, when you had to get comics at the metal spinner rack at the dry goods store. Reprint culture is very strong. There are usually reprint volumes out every week that are at least of interest. That wasn't true for me last week, and it isn't true today. And as far as I can tell, it's not going to be true next week either. I think the next thing that I haven't already got in the mail myself, the next thing that I would buy in a comic shop is a big Fantastic Four collection, bringing together all the issues in which the Fantastic Four, the world is threatened by Galactus, the World Devourer. In a neat move by Marvel Comics, the creator of the Fantastic Four, of reissuing these issues in a larger edition, a bigger book, as befitting the fact that Galactus, the supervillain, is as tall as a building. But I don't even know about that. I have those issues many, many times over in many reprints. So, but one way or another, I didn't want the comic book day to go by without anything at all, especially since a number of you very kindly emailed when I did a late comic book day last week and said that despite everything, despite the fact that this channel is pretty exclusively about books, that a lot of you like it when I talk about comic books, and I don't need much more of a nudge than that. I love to talk about myself. As long as I clearly label the video, those of you who aren't interested in comic books can just skip. So I thought I would bring up a comic book character who is in the news, even though there was no way for me to buy anything about that character today at my local comic shop. Not that I would have anyway. It's been a gray and very fitful day with pop-up downpours and pop-up rumbles of thunder, and not the kind of day that you want to go out. If you don't have to, not the kind of day that you want to go out. So I wouldn't have gone anyway. But even if I had gone, the character in question that I have in mind is Captain Marvel. Only it's not the Captain Marvel that will come immediately to the minds of many comic book readers today. It's the original Captain Marvel. It's the character now known colloquially as Shazam, who's in the news because at the San Diego Comic-Con, which once again, no one with an institutional budget sent Steve to. I've seen now hundreds and hundreds of hours of live footage of people going, happy as clams, walking around in crowds full of cosplayers. And I couldn't help but notice, as I would, a large number of dogs in the audience, a large number of dogs in attendance inside the convention space. So I'm pretty sure I could have gotten away with bringing Frida in and just carrying her on my arm the whole time. But no, nobody sent me. But one of the highlights of San Diego Comic-Con, there was one right at the beginning, which we talked about in the last comic book day, which was the teaser trailer for the Teen Titans, the Titans TV series, which will be part of DC's direct streaming service, and it will be a tentpole of their direct streaming service where you pay, I don't know what it is, $10 or $20 a month, and you get a DC platform for everything. I'm certainly going to do it. I'm an enormous DC fanboy. I won't do it for Titans, but I'll definitely watch. That trailer was notorious because Robin, the somewhat grown-up sidekick of Batman, said F Batman on camera, and pearls were clutched all over geekdom. but as I predicted, bigger fish eventually claimed the pond, and the two big ones were the trailers, the initial full-length official trailers for Aquaman and Shazam, the two new movies coming out from DC Comics. Aquaman I will talk about another time, believe you me. But the Shazam trailer was interesting, and it has lots of people. More people have been talking about that than have been talking about the Aquaman. Unfortunately, Aquaman looks a little generic. The Shazam trailer looks like something different. Like, if you go to see it, you won't be seeing an ordinary superhero movie, which I think, thanks to the glut of superhero movies, a lot of moviegoers are looking for something that might not be completely ordinary. And also has bright colors, which is an extreme rarity for DC's cinematic universe, all of which is filmed in black and white and at night, except when on the notable instances where it isn't, and those movies do well, and audiences love those movies. So why DC doesn't do this all the time, I don't know. I couldn't help but notice that most of the Shazam trailer takes place at night. anyway, the subject is interesting to me. Captain Marvel has always been interesting to me. That is the main character. The main character, his name is Captain Marvel. He says Shazam in order to gain his superpowers. And this was a gimmick, a great gimmick that was created by Bill Parker and C.C. Beck, and that premiered in 1940 in Whiz Comics. No snickering from those of you in the back rows. And it was the premiere of Captain Marvel. And the origin story was there's an orphan boy named Billy Batson who rides an enchanted subway. It's a long story. And he meets an ancient wizard. And the wizard's name is Shazam. And the wizard says that he's chosen Billy Batson. All of this seems fairly accurately reflected in the trailer. And tells Billy Batson, say my name. Speak my name to gain your powers, to become something different. And Billy Batson doesn't understand, but he does speak the name. He says Shazam, and a lightning bolt transforms him into an adult, a gigantic, brightly red-clad, white-caped adult superhero called Captain Marvel, whose superpowers derive, oh, they don't derive, but it's a handy mnemonic that they are Shazam. They are, the S stands for the wisdom of Solomon. The H stands for the strength of Hercules. The first A stands for the stamina of Atlas. The Z stands for the power of Zeus. The second A stands for, at first, for decades, the second A stood for the martial prowess, the bravery, the courage of Achilles. And the M stands for the speed of Mercury. And those were elaborated over time to mean a lot more. The strength of Hercules became Superman-level strength. The power of Zeus and the invulnerability of Achilles meant that this character could shrug off lasers and bullets and whatnot. The speed of Mercury eventually transformed into both speed and flight. And Captain Marvel had all sorts of adventures and was tremendously popular. That's the thing that a lot of people forget, because his subsequent history has been so mired in legal issues that people forget this character was enormously popular, outsold everything else at the newsstand. And the reason isn't far to seek, because at the time that Captain Marvel premiered, comic books were for children. And as cool as it is for a child to save up and buy a comic in which Superman or Batman throw around bad guys and quip. The thing to remember about Superman and Batman is that they told wisecracks all the time. Batman did all the time. If that scenario was appealing for a kid watching these renegades just beat the crap out of the bad guys, even more appealing for a kid is a book about a kid who only has to say a word to become one of those people, to become a big, powerful superhero in his own right. That was grappled to. The reading public grappled to it. And also the U.S. Armed Forces ate up Captain Marvel like crazy, not just because he had a military appellation, but also because his adventures tended to be bigger, broader, and sillier. More fun, definitely more escapist than Superman or Batman. And I don't mean any disrespect here to some of the artists that I love, but Captain Marvel was also drawn better. It was the comics were done better. It was a very different visual style from Superman or Batman or Wonder Woman, but it was very well done. It was very entertaining to look at, and that success spawned all sorts of spin-offs, all sorts of Captain Marvel spin-offs, not just a talking tiger. about which maybe the less said the better, but also a bunch of other lightning-powered heroes. Billy Batson knows, you see him in the trailer, Freddie Freeman, a crippled orphan boy, who, when he says the name Captain Marvel, is struck by a magic lightning bolt that gives him Captain Marvel-style superpowers, but keeps him a teenage boy, keeps him exactly himself. And also Mary Marvel, Mary Batson, eventually gains the ability to say the word Shazam and be transformed into Mary Marvel. And these characters were immensely powerful. There were a whole bunch of others. There was a whole Marvel family. There were Lieutenant Marvels. They all had backstories. And who all had people, each one of them was the favorite of a large group of readers. And right away, before Captain Marvel even drifts into legal troubles, and the legal troubles were on the horizon right from the beginning, because on the cover of the very first appearance of Captain Marvel, he is throwing a car against a wall. I don't know how to stress this, but in 1940, a superhero, a black-haired, costumed superhero with a cape throwing a car against a wall would have referenced something very immediately. Of course, I refer to the cover of Action Comics, in which Superman makes his debut and is a big black-haired superhero with a cape throwing a car against a wall. It was... Do you mind? Do you mind? Here, come see your guests as long as you're biting everything in sight. You're going to bite them too? She's a little bit restive because we can't go out for long. Not only is there a threat of rain constantly, but it's incredibly humid. It's like 96% humidity outside, which exhausts her right away. She doesn't believe it. She doesn't believe it when she's begging to go outside, but the minute we're outside, she's a pancake. So anyway, as I was saying, even before the legal troubles started enveloping Captain Marvel, it was of course inevitable that the creators of Superman were going to sue for copyright infringement for something like Captain Marvel. I myself don't think there was any merit to that suit. I think the characters are as different as they could be, except they can both throw cars against walls. but one way or another, long before that happened, you could already see conceptual problems. Captain Marvel and Captain Marvel Jr. and Mary Marvel were created out of whimsy. They were designed to be just simply enjoyed and not thought about all that much. Not a lot of intense thought went into their creation. Not a lot of intense, deep thought went into their adventures. Giant robots, giant gorillas, bald supervillains. And not a lot of thought went into any implications involved. And you can tell that right away. I mean, in the smaller instances, there's Mary Marvel, who, keep in mind, this was in the heyday of secret identities. No superhero was just a superhero. They all had a secret identity. How do you have a secret identity? If your name is Mary Batson, you say a magic word, you're transformed by a bolt of lightning into a superpowered version of yourself. You look exactly the same, and your superhero name is Mary. How do you keep a secret identity under those circumstances? The writers of Mary Marvel simply didn't think about it. And same thing with Captain Marvel Jr. Not only, he doesn't say Shazam, remember, he says Captain Marvel to get his powers, and his name is Captain Marvel Jr., which means he's the only superhero in existence who cannot say his own name. If reporters come up to him after he's stopped a bank robbery and say, "Who are you?" he can't tell them. Or he'll immediately transform back into Freddie Freeman right in front of them and ruin his own secret identity. But with Captain Marvel Jr., the secret identity problem is even deeper. Because if you were a crippled orphan boy, you know, getting along on crutches, and suddenly you were given the ability to say a magic word and transform into a perfectly superpowered version of yourself. Not an older man, but a superpowered version of yourself in bright blue leotards with no crutch. Then why would you ever say your magic word again? Why would you ever revert? Why would you ever go back? No one ever would. It doesn't make any sense at all that anyone ever would, and yet Freddie Freeman does all the time. It's not just those smaller problems, it's also the larger problem of Captain Marvel himself. Actually, I have a picture here of the great Alex Ross. This is who we're talking about. There's Captain Marvel throwing a boulder into a erupting volcano. And that is the writer and the artist capturing not only the visuals of Captain Marvel, that is such a beautiful, I wish I had a poster of that, it also captures the idiocy of Captain Marvel. That's of course not what you do. If you do that to an erupting volcano, you're going to make things much worse. You're not going, it's not like a garden hose that you have to plug. But nevertheless, that's the sort of thinking that perfectly typified Captain Marvel adventures. But there's a problem with Captain Marvel, and writers saw that relatively early on. Back when he was selling 1 million copies an issue and making everybody a lot of money, nobody cared. But once a later generation, the next generation of comic writers came along, people who wanted to think about how these things actually work instead of just having adventures, then people started to see the problem. There's a problem with Captain Marvel, which is that we don't know who he is. We have no idea who he is. He is not the Wizard Shazam. The Wizard Shazam stays himself. He's right there in all the adventures, an old bearded man on the Rock of Eternity. But he's not Billy Batson anymore either. In the original incarnation of Captain Marvel, Billy Batson says his word and transforms into Captain Marvel. He does not transform into a larger adult body with superpowers, but stay himself. He's gone, and we don't know who the captain is. We have no idea. We're lucky that he's a good guy, but as to his personality, he doesn't seem to have one beyond just a smile. And that was on writers' minds when this character started to go down the long path of his torturous evolution. And that torturous evolution was marked more by legal squabbles than by anything else, because there was a copyright suit, sure as shooting, with the creators of Superman, a copyright infringement ruling that eventually involved my favorite United States justice, who was not on the Supreme Court, Learned Hand, a wonderful man, a brilliant legal scholar. I'm sorry, but if you look at his resume, you will find Captain Marvel. It's kind of funny. He didn't think it was funny, but he didn't think anything was funny. Anyway, but it wasn't just that. It was also that in the meantime, a new company started. Marvel Comics started. And if you're Marvel Comics, you really, really want to have the legal rights to the name Captain Marvel. You don't want Captain Marvel belonging to some other company. And given the rise and fall of corporate finances and fortunes, given the ins and outs of the legal system, sure enough, sooner or later, Marvel Comics got the right to buy, first to license and then to buy, the name Captain Marvel. And they slapped it onto a, no offense to Marvelites here, but a rather second-rate character. In the 1960s, I think, in the late 1960s, Marvel's Captain Marvel appeared, he was a Kree warrior, an alien warrior. He came to Earth with powers and abilities far beyond those of mortal men, but not much beyond those of mortal men. He wasn't Superman. He was just a little extra strong, a little extra durable. Couldn't fly. No idea why he was able to breathe. No idea why he was able to eat the food. And his Kree name was Mar-Vell. And he... What are you eating? No. Come here. Come here. Oh, Frida, honestly. Oh, it's gone now, whatever it was. But anyway, I swear, she just lays there, staring at the wall until I start talking to the camera. And she also has a bowl of food on the floor, but she's eating whatever she can find, and then she'll throw it up later. Anyway, if I can just continue. Marvel created a character named Captain Marvel. Captain Mar-Vell of the Kree military comes to Earth and takes on the superhero name of Captain Marvel. It ill-defined superpowers, sort of a bland personality, big blonde hairdo. He wasn't much of anything until later when a creator named Jim Starlin got a hold of him and made him into something, made him actually interesting. Also created a supervillain you might have heard of called Thanos. and also when he got the green light from Marvel Comics, in one of the very first graphic novels of them all, killed Captain Marvel. Not in battle, like Superman in Doomsday. He gave him cancer and had him slowly die in the course of a graphic novel. And it was an amazing work. It is an amazing graphic novel. It holds up just as well today as it did when it originally appeared, and created howls of protest from people who said this is no heroic way for a character to die. And Marvel has kept it up. they have a new Captain Marvel. The name has bounced all around. They've done what they can to keep it in their own use, and there are now legal strictures on DC Comics about the use of it. Captain Marvel cannot appear on the cover of a book starring Captain Marvel. Captain Marvel cannot appear in any kind of merchandising. I'm not 100% sure about whether or not Captain Marvel can appear as just a name in the script of a comic. I'm pretty sure that they can get away with that. They can't copyright the words. They can only copyright the words as a title or a proprietary thing. But you can see already that's going to cause problems. That is why DC has been slowly rebranding the character as Shazam, so that they can have a book with a title. And Marvel has continued to keep a character as Captain Marvel. And currently that is Carol Danvers, a long-standing character in their continuity who got superpowers and was originally Ms. Marvel and then Warbird and a whole bunch of other things. And now she is Captain Marvel. The only thing she shares in common with the original Marvel Captain Marvel, aside from vaguely Kree-based superpowers, is that those superpowers are completely undefined. We have no idea what the Carol Danvers Captain Marvel can and cannot do. We have no idea. Ask yourself real quick, right off the top of your head, even if you're a diehard Marvel fan, when she's not using her energy powers, whatever those are, is she super strong? No idea. None whatsoever. If you walk up to her when she's sound asleep at night and you shoot her in the back with a pistol, will you kill her? Or is she bulletproof when she's not paying attention? No idea whatsoever. Do the energy powers have any upper limit? No idea whatsoever. Just a mess. A poorly thought out mess, just the way the original character was. And that is why the trailer for the DC Captain Marvel is called Shazam. I'm not 100% sure whether or not the character, who's played by Zachary Levi, a really, really talented, really charismatic on-screen presence, and an actor some of you may know from a TV show called Chuck 2.0. He has been wanting to get into comic book movies for a long time, and eventually did by replacing the original actor who played the dashing Fandral, one of the Warriors 3 in the Thor movie franchise. He replaced that character for the second Thor movie and had an elaborate action sequence that he carried off really well, and it gained a lot of attention, as I suspect it was meant to. And then he's abruptly killed off in the third movie, gets a sword to the stomach, and that's that. So he no sooner does his Fandral fall face first onto the floor dead than his Captain Marvel wakes up alive and happy. He switched companies, but he managed to land on his feet in another and much bigger superhero franchise. And I'm not 100% sure if his character will be called Captain Marvel in the movie. I don't see how you could stop that, but they could at least refer to him as the Captain or Cap or something like that. But one way or another, if you watched the trailer for this new Captain Marvel, this new Shazam movie, you did not see any of the character problems that I was just talking about. And that's because of a man named Jeff Johns, a comic book writer, a comic book film producer, who, unfortunately, it was a large part of the force behind the inexplicable decision to set all of the modern DC extended connected cinematic universe movies in the dark, in the rain, and film them mostly in black and white. An inexplicable decision that means that when you think back to your memories of the movies that he was deeply involved with, Superman or the Green Lantern Corps, for Pete's sakes, takes place in the dark. Why is when huge set pieces on Oa and everywhere else take place in the dark? But also, Batman vs. Superman, Dawn of Justice. These movies, when you think back on them just quickly without any preparation, all of your memories will be of scenes that take place at night in the rain. When DC Comics characters are extremely visually vibrant. they're aside from Batman, they're extremely bright, sunshine characters. They are mythological rather than psychological, like Marvel Comics. And Jeff Johns is largely responsible for that, except in the one instance where he wanted it that way, and he encountered a director who said, absolutely not. I have a different vision for this thing. That director, of course, was Patty Jenkins. And the movie was Wonder Woman, and it was embraced. It's the only DC Comics cinematic universe movie that is beloved. And that's rewatchable. Instead, most of them are pure slices of Jeff Johns-iana like Suicide Squad, where the opening scene takes place in a prison yard in sunlight and the sun is never seen again, one way or another. When he was writing comics, he came up with an idea. Obviously, he was one of the many writers over many decades who has been bothered by the fact that no matter how you slice it, Captain Marvel is a little weird. This boy says a magic word and transforms into a stranger, into someone we don't know anything about. We know all sorts of things about Billy Batson. We know he has a family. We know what he thinks is right and wrong. Captain Marvel, no. No. Jeff Johns weaponized an idea that had been developed by writers, decades before him. That just isn't true. That we're just going to say that isn't true. That the original idea that Billy Batson says his magic word and transforms as Captain Marvel, in the sense of transforming into a different person, we're going to say that idea isn't true. We're going to say instead that he transforms, yes, but he stays Billy Batson. And Jeff Johns added a bunch of other stuff too, a mystical element, far greater. I mean, yes, Captain Marvel, the original Captain Marvel's powers were magic-based, but they were all physical. He was super fast, he was super strong, he was super invulnerable, that sort of thing. In the new version of Captain Marvel, in addition to all of those things, he can also generate electricity. It's not just the lightning bolt that summons him. He can generate it. He's a mystical being. He can project magic, and he has a white hood in addition to a white cape and a couple of other things. But the main change that Jeff Johns really weaponized is that when Billy Batson says his magic word, he transforms physically only. He remains a teenage boy, a young teenage boy. He's just, it's just when the lightning bolt clears off, he's, a foot and a half taller and 300 pounds of solid muscle, invulnerable, can fly, bulletproof, can bend steel in his bare hands. And obviously, as you can tell from the trailer, that will be mined for all its comedic effect. And I have no objection to that, except for one. you know, on this channel, when I say I have no objection to that, I'm going to follow up with And my objection is, I don't want to be a party poop. I'm hoping that Shazam will be a successful movie. I'm hoping that it will be the start of a franchise. I'm hoping that it will be a really big deal, and that it will mean we'll see this character interacting with other DC characters. I think it's anything that is bright, anything that is sunny, anything that's optimistic, anything that's funny. Fine, absolutely interacted with the others because they need it. They shouldn't need it. Batman movies, yes, absolutely dark and somber. All the other DC characters should have been handled from the beginning in a completely different way. And of course, there should never have been a Suicide Squad movie. But anyway, I digress. The problem with the Jeff Johns, this new conception of Captain Marvel, is that it doesn't solve the original problem. It, in some ways, makes it worse, creepier. In the original version, the problem was that we don't know who Captain Marvel is. Billy Batson doesn't transform. He doesn't say his magic word in order to get superpowers. He says his magic word to transform into somebody else. That's bad. In my opinion, that's not quite as bad as a horny teenage boy transforming into a gigantically powerful adult male while staying a horny teenage boy with no perspective, no impulse control, no nothing. So, and that is the path that we're taking now. That is the version of Captain Marvel that is going to be the cinematic version. In other words, the version that 90% of the people in the world will know anything about. Keep in mind, these things go out to an enormous audience, and this audience hasn't read every back issue from Fawcett and Whiz Comics and whatnot. So they're going to see this and think, okay, that's Captain Marvel. And what are they seeing? What do you see even in the trailer? You see a teenage orphan transform into an enormous, muscular, handsome adult man in spandex, and then drop a come-on line at the first woman that he sees. Hey, I'm a superhero. Isn't that a little creepy? Isn't that a lot creepy? Saying nothing of the fact that logically it doesn't make any sense. Of course, the wizard Shazam in the movie would not agree to that. The only reason that the wizard Shazam thinks it's a good idea for Billy Batson to have all this power is because he's not going to be the one wielding it. Of course, a wise old wizard, if that is not the case, would not give these powers to a kid. There's no reason for it. If that's not the case, if you don't transform into a lieutenant, into a captain in the service of Shazam, someone that he knows and can trust, if you just stay yourself, a feckless kid who is going to throw people through plate glass windows and smile and smirk and maybe not know what he's doing, then you would give those powers to a cop or fireman, an adult person. You wouldn't do it. You wouldn't do it to a kid. It doesn't make sense anymore. That's the main problem with the underlying thought of Jeff Johns' rethink. And I think the secondary problem is just the creep out factor. Is that the adult civilians, especially the adult civilian women in this DC cinematic universe, are going to see Captain Marvel. They're going to see him save school buses full of children. They're going to see him defeat supervillains and alight on the sidewalk to say hi and ask if everybody's okay. And they're not going to have any idea that a 15-year-old is perving all over them inside this giant muscular man who cannot be resisted by anyone except Superman or Wonder Woman. It bugs me just a little. Because it's just a little problem. I admit it's probably the only way that will work. I don't think you could have made a big cinematic version of the original conception, because the viewers would be asking the same questions that I was asking, 50 years ago. Who is this guy? So that was on my mind today when I was at my local comic shop. Only I wasn't. If I'd gone to the local comic shop today, I would have been in the mood to buy something related to Captain Marvel. I've never been all that big a fan of the character. I'm of course a Superman fan, the world's biggest Superman fan. But I would have, just in solidarity with the new trailer and with people talking about this whole new world of comics, I would have found something, but it just didn't feel worth the effort. so I didn't do it. So instead I thought I would just, turn on the MacBook and give you a tedious history lesson. And I'm afraid, I hate to say this, but I'm afraid you're due for the same thing next week on Wednesday, because as far as I can tell, nothing is coming out on next Wednesday that I want to actually go to my LCS and buy. So what are you going to do? Skip the video, I suppose. But anyway, I'll be back today and we'll talk books. So thank you for your patience, Book 2.